Duke is spending $8 million for former Tulane quarterback Darian Mensah. Why?
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into the Locked On Seminoles podcast. I am your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football recruiting analyst and writer. Thank you for making the Locked On Seminoles podcast your first listen each and every day. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Today's show is jam-packed. It is a very information-heavy podcast, and there's a little bit of theory and thought, not only with the article I'm going to share that CBS wrote, it was very well done, but also about how it's going to impact recruiting for 2026 for Florida State and every other major college football program. But to begin, as I noted in the opening, Duke is spending a reported $8 million over 2 years for Darian Mensah, the former Tulane quarterback. Why? The description of this is going to help explain the rest of the show, so please pay very close attention to the following. First off, he is a good quarterback. He came out of California, did well for Tulane, but he's not a P4 kid. But Duke's bought in. Their quarterback's gone. He's transferred to Oregon State. They've got him. That's their deal. But when did Duke get that kind of money for football? And when did Duke start caring? How does all this work? Well, here's why. As I'll share my screen and explain further detail with a few quotes and comments from the CBS article, you're only spending your entire year's allotment within a 6-month time, give or take. What are you talking about? It's probably the reaction I'm getting out there, whether you're listening on Apple, Spotify, watching on YouTube, whatever it may be. And here's the deal. The House settlement from Congress is going to give college football programs and, quite frankly, athletic departments across the FBS a whole bunch of money, but it's going to be more mandated. The collectives are going to be reined in, if you will. I don't know if they're going to be existing at all, how that's going to work. That's a lot of legal arguments that are going to be taking place down the road, and I'm not going down that rabbit hole. But for now, the way it sounds like, at least initially, is that the collectives aren't going to have as much power. They're trying to make it a little more even, which is never going to happen completely in college football. We all know that. There's always cheating. But stay with me. You're going to have to spend your whole year allotment for NIL up until July 1st. They can't do anything about it because that's spent and it's already done, and the House settlement doesn't begin until July 1st. So you're seeing teams like Duke spend a lot more money because they're not going to use that NI collective next fall. It's already going to be to the House settlement. At least that's the thought process. That could always collapse too, and that's a whole nother podcast. But most college football programs are betting, along with their athletic departments as a whole, that the House settlement's going to take place. So, for instance, last year, a few of the quarterbacks like Cam Ward, Riley Leonard, some of the guys that were 1-year deals went for well over $1 million, maybe $2 million or whatever. If Mensah, who's played 1 year, Cam Ward had played in college football for 4. If Mensah is going to be a guy that gets the opportunity after 1 year, even if it is incentive laden for $4 million per at Duke, what do you think Texas would spend if Arch Manning, just hypothetically, decided that he was going to transfer and they needed a quarterback next year, or he got hurt or whatever? A school that's got deep pockets with their oil money. This impacts everybody because the market has gone crazy. D tackle and offensive tackle, like you're paying backup money, $150,000 for a guy that's not starting, $200,000. He's standing on the sidelines next to Mike Norvell or whatever head coach it is for that respective program. Again, 12 months worth of money dropped into 6 months. Then the House settlement takes over. To that end, let me share my screen here and explain a little bit further. I want you to see this one quote. It's pretty interesting to me. I have a feeling that most people here will also feel the same. And I'll read off it and other ones for those of you listening on Spotify, Apple, etc. These are really, really unique perspectives because whoever got all these quotes, they spent some time and effort. This is not, I repeat, this is not an easy thing to do. So first off, here is the quote. You take a contract and you multiply it by 2, and that's what you're paying. That is from an SEC director of player personnel. There are no specific names, meant they can't do that, and I get it. But this article from CBS is tremendous. Let me give them credit here. The writer for this is John Talty and Chris Hummer. It was a little bit less than a day ago as I go to this podcast and create it. And the name of it is Highest Paid Player in College Football History, Transfer Quarterback Darian Mensah's Duke Deal is Sign of Times. Now, with that being stated, here are a couple other things, like I was mentioning Cam Ward, etc. I'm just going to read off some of this. A year ago, the going rate for a top-of-the-market quarterback like Cam Ward, who went from Washington State to Miami, or Riley Leonard, who left Duke for Notre Dame, was a little less than half of that. Again, these are guys that have been in college football multiple years. That's the first thing to think about. Also, just kind of looking at this, if it's accurate, they're using the number just specifically. I think there's incentives with this. A $4 million annual salary would put Mensah on par or higher than 9 base salaries of Power 4 head coaches in 2024, according to USA Today's coaching salary database. That's insane. Further, if you want to look at it from this perspective about Mensah, Mensah was repped by Young Money APAA sports agent Noah Reisenfeld and Addie Von Gontard on the deal. Darren Heitner, a well-known sports law attorney, assisted a legal counsel and called it groundbreaking Darian Mensah NIL deals with Duke and NIL collective Durham Devils Club in a post on social media. As this will be brought up later in the show, as I talk about 2026 recruiting, because this a little bit with here at Portal is going to go into an avalanche in the months of April, May, and June when all the recruiting visits take place. So remember this. They use really good representation. Mensah's family, the people in his camp, smart move. Very, very smart move. And I'm going to bring that up about 50 more times over the next week because kids that don't are going to leave a lot of money on the table. Duke and Mensah are just one example of a market that has exploded this transfer portal cycle. Washington State quarterback John Mateer, the top-ranked quarterback in the 24/7 portal rankings, is believed to have commanded a deal in a similar neighborhood as Mensah to go to Oklahoma in an intense recruiting battle with Miami and North Carolina. This is just a great example here, folks. If you get the right people around you and you have a good product to sell, you can maximize your opportunities. Now, I'm not saying Mensah should have got $8 million, and I still think there's a lot of incentives for him to maximize this. That's how I would set it up if I was Duke. And I'm sure the smart school like that has plenty of reps to make sure they got the best end of the deal they could. You got to give him credit for having the people around and this deal coming together. And I hope that he earns it. He's, from what I've seen of Mensah, he's really good. But now how does it impact Florida State and everybody else? Obviously, Thomas Castellanos is already in the boat for FSU, but you've got all these other players. And earlier today, before I did this pod, Micah Pettis committed in the Noles. Big offensive tackle out of Ole Miss. I did a separate pod on that. Make sure you check that out. There are a lot of guys getting cash that are earning it. Florida State had to beat out a lot of big-name programs. You could have went to several SEC programs, Big 12, etc. This is a unique scenario. What you're going to see between now and the end of June, whether it is portal or high school, will be groundbreaking, and there will never be anything quite like it again. Now, let me repeat and expand a little bit. Never like that again. Why? Because there's going to be the house settlement in some capacity. Again, as many people have duly noted, that is not an ironclad situation and things could change with it. And that's fine. Only thing that college football programs can do, because the portal's open right now, is to spend, if it falls through and something changes, it is what it is. You are guessing. But there's a whole lot of people guessing on the same page because the money is crazy. That article, it also brought up talking about offensive tackles. You're going to pay a lot. There aren't many of them in the portal. Guy like Pettis, you're going to pay a lot. I bet, I have no insight. I bet he got $500,000 or more to come to Florida State. And he wasn't a left tackle. There aren't many like him. SEC experience, the size, and the overall athleticism of him, the upside's pretty high. That's my guess. Maybe Florida State paid more. Maybe Pettis turned down a deal somewhere else because he wanted to go to Florida State. I don't know. But those kind of positions are going to lead to a lot of cash being dropped. Again, once the house settlement gets here, every athletic department, it's somewhere around $22 million or something like that. Each athletic department in the Power 4 is going to get. I haven't delved into all of it, and I don't want to. Not yet. I want to hear more details, and I want it to be more ironclad before I dive into it. but about 15 million of that, according to John Bryce of Football Scoop, it for SEC schools out of the multiple people that Bryce has spoken with, is going to be towards football. So you're going to have that on the back end. So this is going to be the biggest year for spending for the major programs. Somebody like Southern Cal or Notre Dame or Oklahoma, whatever league, or Notre Dame's independent, Florida State, they're going to have money on this back end. And that's going to be really unique too, because there could be a few kids that for whatever reason, they hit the portal in the spring and then they don't get a deal done until maybe after recruiting for whatever reason. That could be part of it on the back end. Who knows? But the smart money is to get a deal done now, and then you get some of that pay on the back with the house settlement as well. So you double dip. We're going to talk about 2026 recruiting, a key player that Florida State and numerous other programs are going after, kid that I know, and how teams are going to have to be really smart with their money, as long as the recruits and their families too, to make sure they capitalize on this cash. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can finish the season with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for a person to pick up a W. You can bet on players, if they score a touchdown, how many yards they have, all kinds of different player props, and it's a lot of fun. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com to get your first chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Now, eventually, this is going to transition into nothing else that I love better than high school football recruiting. All this money can't just be spent on one thing, obviously. It's not going to be just the portal guys. You got nothing for the recruits. It's not how it works. Every school has to think about this. Okay, here are X, our portal needs, and here are Y. Once we're done, we've got a void avoid here. We need to figure that out afterwards. But 26 recruiting is heavy already. Teams taking back. Florida State had several kids visit already since Gus and Herb Hand, all these guys came over. Tim Harris, all of them. They need to have an idea. You're guessing again. So there's a lot of stuff that both the recruit and the school for any given situation has to look at and figure out. Okay, obviously you got to want to go there and the coaching and all that. But when it gets down to the brass tacks, Florida State or any other school for that matter is going to have to be in a situation where they know how much they can spend and how to maximize for all parties. So the transfer portal doesn't happen for the kids coming in out of the high school ranks to the best of their ability. I know some kids are going to transfer no matter what, but that's one of the problems Florida State's had and several other programs that fell off this past year. You got to pick the right people. Everything's got to mesh. So with that being said, Kaiden Prothro is a kid that I've mentioned on this show before. And if you clicked on this podcast on the YouTube page, you saw a picture of him earlier this year in fall camp. I got a picture of Kaiden had his Florida State gloves on the day that I went to Bowden High School, just a little bit west of Atlanta, where he plays, one of the best programs in the state of Georgia that gets state championship rings up on that wall. And it's amazing what a guy like him could earn. He's the number 17 player by ESPN, et cetera. So let me share my screen so you can see some of his rankings and whatnot first off. And for those of you that are listening to this, I'll go through the entire list. This is a big-time player. And we'll use him as an example, if you will, on why NIL, if he plays it right, can be great for all parties involved. Okay, number one, as far as just the pure rankings, On3 has him as the lowest out of the four major services. This shows you how good he is. Number 62 in the nation. That's the lowest ranking he has. 247's got him number 42. Rivals number 38. And again, ESPN at number 17. ESPN also has Kaiden as the number one overall tight end prospect. Nobody has him lower than third, and that's 24/7. So he's an elite player. That is not in question. He's 6'6", 210-ish. I saw him play earlier this year, and to be honest with you, he was sick as a dog. Before the game, he was laying on the field, literally, because he was so sick, but the first three catches he had were all touchdowns. The guy's a baller. He mans up when he has to, and they didn't rep him quite as much during the game, but when they needed to throw the football, Prothro ate him alive. He's more to me like a big receiver. He reminds me a lot of Johnny Wilson. And again, he's from Georgia. Florida State's been all over him. He visited for the North Carolina game. He's been to a lot of Florida State events for a long time. Now, with a guy like Kaiden, Florida State or any other program's got to look at this. Okay, again, here's how much money we're going to spend. They just obviously got Deuce Robinson. He would be a great replacement. He's very similar to Deuce in style of play, for the record. If we're going to get this kid, how much do we allot to it? How much do we think the settlement's going to be? How's that going to work out? Every school's got to look at this differently. You have to be sure that you know what you're doing. So I got a few questions / comments for everybody, and fire away with your own thoughts. This is open-ended because, again, the House settlement, there's a lot of people that have opinions on it, but it is not done. If there's anything I know about politicians, don't trust it 100%, and I'm sure most people out there agree with me. So follow along here. Number one, how will NIL be spent on recruits for Florida State? Let's look at this through a Florida State lens. Are they going to spend quite a bit on the portal? They have to, especially O-line. We all know that. Pettis was the third O-line. O-lineman that they got, but they still have to, they got to improve the high school recruiting. Everybody knows it. Florida State's talked about that privately, et cetera. Everybody knows it. And they've done a pretty good job to start. They've had a junior day, all that stuff. But how much are they going to spend? What allotment percentage? And again, this is through June 30th. I'm going to say they're going to spend 60% on high school. And I could be dead wrong. Whatever their number is, and I don't know what that total is, Florida State, I think, is going to spend a ton of money on the high school ranks because at some point they got to take that hit. O-line's kind of the exception. They got to hit the home run there. Similar with linebacker in the portal, but O-line recruiting in high school is also going to be a part of that. Eventually, you got to do that. And Florida State's not going to be great next year, I don't think. They'll be pretty good. The way they've started the portal, I think they'll win 6 games or more, but they still have a long way to go. We got to see some things to believe they're going to get above that. They got to earn it. So we'll talk about win totals in the spring. So again, how much will Florida State pony up for recruits on NIL? Just their own, from their own collective, Battles End, etc. From a percentage standpoint, I'm going 60%. If you're on YouTube, comment. I'm really curious what you think about it because, quite frankly, it's not an easy thing to really guess because you never know. You might be in it for an NIL situation for a player that you didn't think you were going to get, and they have a visit to Tallahassee and they like it. So maybe you spend a little more. You're just projecting right now. There's not a hard answer. I'm guessing 60%. Number 2 with this, for facilities, for cash going towards stadiums, weight rooms, and all that stuff, how much of that money that you have that could go to NIL does Florida State, obviously they're finishing up the stadium, are they taken out of that? How do you categorize it? You're not going to just stop working on Doak. You got payments to make. You got things you got to work on there. You still got personnel decisions to make all across the athletic department. These are the types of decisions that are really, really important. And third, is this boom with player NIL reducing the number of college football coaches being fired? This one, I'm a steadfast yes. Florida State, I think, let's be honest, Norvell was 2-10. Their contract was huge. They had a lot of things going on. And if you look at college football in general, there aren't many guys getting fired or pushed out. Like Mac Brown basically got pushed out. Great guy, but he wasn't winning, so they bring in Bill Belichick in North Carolina, whatever. Next year might be different, but because of the contracts being so big and because people are not sure about how the health settlement's going to impact them, because that's money out of their athletic department budgets that they didn't used to have to spend, that's pretty rough. That is pretty rough. So I think that's really important. I do want to go back to number 1 in a sense, just to give you a reminder. Some of this is going to be a spending spree, again, towards the end of this 6-month period. April, May, and June are when visits take place, or at least they did the last couple of years. Again, the NCAA changes things a lot, but we'll see. Big deals in that last week of June to get rid of some money, look for that to happen. I also think it's going to be even more unpredictable because I know of a few players from just personally knowing them that ended up picking schools that wasn't their first choice. I know of one player in particular, Florida State recruit, I'll leave out name. He ended up signing with his third choice because the NIL deal was just so good. His third choice. That's how much it's impacting things. Finally, on this whole NIL deal, before I just talk about players more like Prothro, and I'll use some more scenarios here in just a moment. If you look at Florida State and where they sit now, this could be the defining moment for the program going forward. They got to make sure they do better next year than what most think, maybe even what I think. to get some more cachet with it. The decisions that the administration, Gus Malzahn, Mike Norvell, everybody about the personnel they bring in out of the NIL transfer portal money, that's all out of one big kitty now, because that helps with the recruiting. You can't just win this next, you got to win long-term too. It is a hard decision. I really want to stress that. There is no easy way to do it. So with that, the next segment is just about how these deals are brokered. And this is some advice for a lot of you recruits out there, because while the schools are making these decisions, don't use your third uncle or somebody else to negotiate for you. We're going to talk about that next, right here on Locked On Seminoles. Have you downloaded the Game Time app yet? Game Time allows you to go get tickets to anything from a movie on Christmas, an opportunity to go to opera, opportunity to go to a football game, basketball game, anything you want to do with your family, your kids, or just going out with some buddies. Game Time is the place you should go. They also have a little thing inside the app called Game Time Picks. You just click on the tab. If you're already in a stadium, like looking at a game like Florida State, all it does is bring up the absolute best prices for you. So you don't have to work as hard. It's a lot faster. I'm very big on that. Also, inside the Game Time app, once you click on a ticket, it will show you the view from your seat of that venue. Doesn't matter if it's a baseball stadium, basketball arena, whatever it is. You could be going to see the Orlando Magic, the Atlanta Falcons. It could be anything. You have an opportunity to look and see where your seat is in conjunction to the action. That's really cool, and it's something I really like about the Game Time app. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right. This is for the savvy people that actually like money. Too much in the last couple of years, I've heard about people trying to negotiate their own NIL deals and failing miserably. Let me be very clear. I am tired of hearing about people that are third uncles, and if you're watching me on YouTube, I'm using air quotes here with a really sarcastic face, that are trying to broker deals. There is no shortcut here. If you're on that side, not the college side, but the recruit side, there is no shortcut. You must do all of the following to maximize your NIL money, especially this year for the class of 26. You especially need to listen up, because you're next up, and B, again, need to have that deal figured out before we get to July 1st. So you have to spend some money and get a financial advisor / lawyer, if not both. You have to find a way to get that done. Is that friendly? Nope. Do it anyway. Like a lot of things in life, it's not what you want to do, but it's what's best. Even if you have to broker it where they get a percentage of your deal, and that's usually how it works, so be it. Do your due diligence now. There are people in every state. I just cannot stress to you enough. For instance, a friend of mine does it, Dan LaForest. He's a guy that lives in Winter Park, Florida, right in the middle of Orlando. He's got negotiations with a lot of players, and he's got deals helping them out. But he's a longtime financial advisor. He's been doing it forever. He is qualified. So let me be clear on qualified. Is it a lawyer, financial advisor, somebody who's at least run and operated his or her own business? If that is not a clear-cut yes, wrong person. You have to spend for your person that is representing you. There is no third uncle that knows how to financially advise. I don't care if they know an assistant coach at Bama, Florida State, Texas Tech, or any other school. You must get bona fide legal counsel. Are we clear on that? With that being stated, there are many different ways to go about it long-term, because these collectives, again, are going to try to spend this money, as I talked about leading up to this point of the pod. How you want to negotiate, whether you want more incentive-weighted, that is up to you. My advice is bet on yourself. If you think you're good, maybe you don't take near as much upfront money, but you consider two other factors. Number one, who you going to have with you as your coach, as your program. Oh, by the way, you're going to college. You actually have to go to class. If you go somewhere, you're going to be miserable, but it was the best upfront money. It's probably not going to do you much good, because let me tell you something. college coaches talk. And if you're an idiot at that program that just took the money and didn't put in the effort once you got there, if you jump in the portal, you're not going to end up where you want. I've had those conversations with people. Don't be that person. And don't be the person advising them to do that either. So again, I understand the upfront money thing. I get it. Bet on yourself. Get the right financial representation. Get the right legal counsel, however you want to put it, because the nomenclature, aka the language to building a business deal, is not something teenagers should be a part of. But you're the person in the contract, so you need a helper. And it ain't going to necessarily come cheap, but if you get the right person on the back end, you will benefit. This is a long-term investment in yourself. And it also means this. This is what I will part you on. If you broker a deal with Florida State, let's just use the Noles because this is a Florida State pod, you have to be sure that you have incentives to keep yourself wanting to be better, making the school happy, and helping the program win. Not any one group of those, not 2 out of 3, all of that. Yourself, the program, and winning all have to meet. You're not going to make a lot of friends in that locker room, for what I've learned, unless you don't go out of your way just to be the guy. There are some exceptions, like the Underwood deal, the guy that went to Michigan. He's a great player, by the way. 10 plus million, whatever it is. That's kind of rare. Michigan's quarterback depth chart was in disaster mode. They were desperate. That is the rare exception that I think it will be accepted because he's a rare talent. Michigan stinks at quarterback, and they didn't really like going 7-5, even though they beat Ohio State. Florida State might make a special deal for a great player. So we're going to, just for fun, I'm going to talk about a couple other players here. And you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen on this too. This is a good way to put it up. These are the players by rivals that are top players. And I'll read them off for those of you, once again, Spotify, YouTube, etc., YouTube Music, whatever it may be that you're using. I think that these guys are great examples. These are the top players that rivals have. So the class of 26 in the state of Florida, top 3 guys. And again, it doesn't really matter what you think where Florida State's at, etc. But I've met all of these guys. Derek Cooper plays at Chaminade Madonna, can play running back, linebacker. That's a kid Florida State can make a run at. They recruit that school very hard. Same school that Jeremiah Smith played at, and numerous other players. Elite athlete. Miami's probably the favorite, but Florida State, now that they got a new staff, I would not be surprised, especially with their South Florida contacts, if he at least took a visit to Florida State. Pepe. I talked about him on the pod yesterday. He's IMG Academy offensive tackle. Offensive tackles are up in terms of their value because not very many of them that are any good, at least, hit the portal. And this is a kid that if they go about it doing right, the IMG people, he's at the right place for this probably. IMG, if Pepe does this right, visits Florida State and other schools, he can maximize his money and help a program out. But they, again, long term, these are great players. They should bet on themselves. Put a few more incentives in there for the deal, not just upfront money. You're not going to do yourself any favors long term, and you'll lose more money if you do it that way. Finally, Dia Bell out of this group. This is a kid that I've known for a while. His dad is Raja Bell, former NBA player, great guy. He's committed to Texas. Obviously, Texas has deep pockets, but Bell made the decision from talking to him numerous times. He thought that Sarkisian could help him as a player. Well done. There are a lot of places a great quarterback like Dia could go. Good for him for picking Texas because they fit the profile, what he wants to do as a player. Just looking at some other guys like Naheem Burrows, plays at Bowles. This is a kid Florida State is definitely after up in Jacksonville. A burner. He's got like Notre Dame and schools out of state after him. He's got a wide variety of opportunities. If Florida State's going to win that battle, obviously NIL's got to be good. But Burrows is the kind of guy that can come in and make an impact somewhere because he's burner. He should go out and absolutely look for an NIL deal that has incentives, and it's not just up front because he has a chance to really, really cash in. These are just some of the examples that I have, and I have very strong takes on this, I know. But to be honest with you, these are guys that are not just good. They're elite players, and they've earned it. But you still got to bet on yourself. Recruiting is going to get more and more volatile with this house settlement. But if these guys get these deals done by June 30th, they can cash in on that. And then the house money in addition to it. It's not one or the other. Both. They can't do anything From what I understand, talking about the government, if the collectives have signed the contracts by end of June 30th, before July 1st, that is huge. And I think a lot of different people need to understand that the representation and how you go about it is very, very important. You will not maximize unless you do this. Bet on yourself. Go get the right people, spend a little money or set up the deal. So if you don't have the money to get that kind of legal representation, set it up in the contract, how much they get based on what the NIL deal is. It will work itself out in the long run. Florida State's right in the middle of this, and it's going to be wild. I'm here for it each and every day on Locked On Seminoles. Like it, subscribe to it. Make sure you hit that notification bell. Come back and check out Locked On Seminoles. I'll be here even on Christmas Day. Everybody have a great one, and Merry Christmas to everybody.